Who's now? Finally here. Mr. Wingo? Here. Ms. Devontae?
Here.
Ms. Stefan?
Here.
And the executive president? All present.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to switch items 10 and 11 on the agenda.
Support.
Support by Mr. Ackerman. Any questions on that motion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Call to the public. Anyone wishing to address the planning commission can come up to speak. You have 3 minutes. And we just do that. Oh, I'm sorry. We can, okay. Well, the motion to adopt the agenda.
Support.
Support by Ms. Chick. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Call to the public. 3 minutes. Please state your name and address clearly and floor is yours.
Well,
How does it sound like it's on?
no. Okay, 2 minutes. Clock's ticking.
Do you want to use this one?
I'll just speak louder.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Roman, committee members, staff. I'd like to speak about your item 10B regarding development of downtown and specifically the beachfront park. I'm confident that our residents really want a waterfront park because I've got some data to show it. The 1996 survey showed that 54% of residents wanted a safe public beach. 2010 survey showed that providing a public beach on Whitmore Lake was number 11 out of 20 priorities, so it was almost on the top half. But a safe public beach is a long way from a $50 million mixed-use development. Myself, I'm a big fan of smaller and slower when it comes to developments. I would like to suggest that the Downtown Planning Group and or the Planning Commission do a survey of residents before you vote to what you have on your agenda called introduce a motion to accept the plan as drafted as policy. You haven't gotten your RFPs back yet, and I think it'd be very interesting to find out what you get there before you create a policy for downtown. I think it'd be very interesting to run some numbers to figure out what it's going to cost just to turn the 75 feet of waterfront that's now muck into a beach. Because that's what the folks have said they want is just a public beach at this point. I think the best developments are ones that grow organically, not ones imposed by local government or small committees. I've seen several downtowns in my life that were built by local governments, and they haven't been very successful from what I've seen. I think the Planning Commission should make the processes for growth of downtown user-friendly, grease the skids, make sure that when somebody comes in with a good idea, they can just get it done, and put the word out that we're looking for good ideas, and then let the market come to us. We have a great township, and a downtown lake area that everybody agrees needs some sprucing up. But sprucing up and putting in a $50 million development are two entirely different balls of wax. You definitely want to protect what we already have, which is this parcel of property is used for two of the biggest events that we have in our community, the 4th of July parking and the ice hockey parking. If you take that away, what have you done to those two events? So I'd like to see the Planning Commission put some brakes on this $50 million train that could, if not steered properly, wreck the most important piece of property that we have in our downtown area. Thank you.
Good evening. I wanted just to second on this as a family.
The mic is working.
Mic working? Okay. I just wanted to second this as a family representative of the families in Whitmore Lake. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Carolyn Short, Nola Road. As I said, I wanted just to second this as, representative of the families in Whitmore Lake. A beach would be, we would have so much more use of the lake other than the people that have lake property. There's nothing for families for us to utilize the lake other than having to spend over $100 to rent a boat to be on the lake. But I'm here to just have a couple of thoughts and ideas for 8A, the dog training club. As part of Snow Road residents, we appreciate the business and we're glad that everything's growing there, but we would like you to consider looking at their proposals or requesting them to consider noise and light pollution that they're producing in the area, especially Nola Road and North Territorial. I now have to put curtains on my kids' rooms, otherwise they're completely lit up. And with the addition of this huge building and their security lights always around the building, it's going to increase, as well as the noise of their road, because there's no tree lines at all to cover any other noise from the garbage companies, from the trucking place, and now the addition of the new building as well. So we would like you to, I'm sorry, I don't know how this all works, but to go back to them and say, have you considered noise and light pollution, or to limit, or how we can limit it, planting some evergreen trees along the main road on the back of the building. Simple things like that the residents would be really grateful for. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the Planning Commission? Seeing none, we'll move on to clarifications from Commission. Anyone have any? No? We'll move on to correspondence. Ms. Byrd, any? Okay, item 8A, I make a motion to open a public hearing, recommend to approve with conditions or deny the request of Ann Arbor Dog Training Club, 1575 East North Territorial Road, for a conditional use under section 36-838. The applicant proposes to construct a new 18,000 square foot building to allow the club to enhance the service offerings to customers from around southeast Michigan. The parcel is located north side of East North Territorial, about 1 mile east of US 23 interchange. Parcel number is B-02-21-300-017, Zone GI, General Industrial.
Support.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. I'll explain the public hearing process. We'll call on the applicant or applicant's representative to give a statement regarding their request. We'll call on the township planner to present his summary. And we will hear from those of the public that support or oppose the request, 3-minute time limit per speaker. And we may come back and ask questions of the applicant at the proper time. So at this time, is there a representative from Ann Arbor Dog Training?
Good evening. My name is Dave Hughes. I'm with Vanston O'Brien. We are the applicant here for Ann Arbor Dog Training, and our request to build a 18,000 square foot indoor dog agility training facility on an existing parcel that's currently used for the same purpose, and they've been there for 30 plus years or so. Again, I didn't realize this. I thought we had our public hearing already, but I'm here to answer any questions. But I do want to assure people in the audience that we are conforming to all the current township standards for noise and light level and landscaping and buffering and all things of that nature. So again, I'm here to answer any questions. I'm here with representatives of the dog training club, also to answer any specific questions about their operation. So
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Lippens?
Yes.
We have actually two items for the Ann Arbor Dog Club on the agenda this evening. The first is the approval of the conditional use, which is what the public hearing tonight is for review. We're also considering the site plan. But at this time, I'll go through the conditional use standards. We've reviewed this site as similar to, but having characteristics of a kennel, but actually not a kennel. No overnight boarding is on site. So in the conditional use requirements, we have standards for kennels that we looked at, and in the site plan we have standards for kennels that we've looked at, but only some of them actually apply to this use because it has no overnight boarding of animals. But for conditional uses, we look at the standards. Is the use harmonious with the ordinance objectives? Will it be designed according to the zoning ordinance and harmonious with surrounding uses? Will it be compatible with the natural environment? Is it compatible with the master plan? Does it have adequate public services? And will it not disturb or not be hazardous to existing surrounding uses? And will it not create additional public costs? The findings that, Planning Commission is in receipt of our review, but the findings which I'd like to note this evening is that even though we have had sufficient communication with the applicant, we know that they're not proposing a kennel. We would like on the site plan, the final site plan submitted, just a note stating that no overnight boarding is permitted on the site. Of course, in the future, if they wanted to expand to that use, they could submit to become a kennel, but they're not at this time, so we would like that clarification added to the site plan, and that, of course, would be a part of the record for their conditional use approval, and would be an official record that that use is not being approved as part of this conditional use approval. With regards to the natural environment, we are in receipt of a review from the Washtenaw County Drain Commission, which has requested some additional landscaping and minor modifications to the pond, and we've added a note that the requirements of Washtenaw County Drain Commission should be in conformance as part of the recommendation to approve. We've also noted that the fire chief has pointed out that a dry hydrant needs to be placed next to their pond, and we've noted in this approval that that should be placed as part of the site plan requirement. And then we've also added a note that if any comments were made at public hearing, that we would recommend Planning Commission consider those public hearings, and if any additional requirements should be made. I will say, with regard to the lighting requirements, the site plan submitted, we have found that it's in conformance with the township lighting requirements. In sum, on the conditional use permit, we have recommended that Planning Commission recommended the Township Board that approval of the conditional use application is granted, and the conditions that we're recommending on that use is that no overnight boarding is permitted on the site, and a note reflecting that condition is added onto the site plan to document it. Two, that Planning Commission does consider in its discussion this evening any comments related to or coming from the public, and find that there are no additional conditions necessary for limiting any impacts on adjacent uses. And our third condition is that a final conforming site plan is submitted, which includes a dry hydrant and any comments from the County Drain Commission, as well as anything else that comes up in the site plan review, if any. So that's my summary on the conditional use. If your Planning Commission's preference is to discuss the conditional use at this time, I can hold my comments on the site plan to the later agenda item.
Yes, please. But since the items on your recommendation also include the site, I'd like Mr. McNamara to give a synopsis of his review, please.
Certainly. From the conditional use standpoint, there really isn't, there weren't any concerns from an engineering perspective that weren't already mentioned. The applicant has been working with the Water Resource Commissioner. They did receive some comments. I wouldn't consider any of them significant, relatively minor modifications to satisfy the county on that. And then, as mentioned, the dry hydrant for the fire chief's requirement. So that handles really the drainage and the fire department. And there weren't any other engineering concerns, certainly, at least, certainly not from the conditional use perspective.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go to the public for anyone that would like to support or oppose, if they have any comments that they would like to propose to the Planning Commission. Seeing any? None? Okay. At this time, I'd like the Planning Commission to discuss or have any questions, pose any questions to our planning consultant and engineering consultant. Ms. Chick?
I have a question about the Chief Wagner's report indicating that he didn't see a proposal for a dry hydrant or water supply for fire suppression. Is that going to be rectified? I mean, do we have something indicating that that will be?
Yes, I know. I think Marcus actually had a conversation with the applicant about this.
Mary.
Oh, Mary did. And they indicated that they were planning to put the dry hydrant in. It just hadn't gotten onto the plan yet. And since the pond is in, we might need to look at the volume. But from Planning Commission's concern in review, adding the hydrant, there's plenty of room to do it. The pond is in the right location, and I don't suspect that any issue will be caused that would require
So
Planning
that'll
Commission.
be on the final site plan?
Absolutely, and
Okay.
it's a condition of our site plan approval letter that it is added.
Thank you.
For the sake of the public and the rest of the commission, can you, Mr. McNamara, possibly explain the difference between what's proposed on the site plan with this pond and what would be required for a dry hydrant, please? Some more specifics on that.
Certainly, effectively, not a whole lot. The dry hydrant, the fire department has requirements for a certain square footage threshold, a certain distance for major roads, that the water supply be available for fire fighting purposes. So it's essentially a hydrant that has a pipe to the pond where the fire department can hook up in the case of emergency and draw water. So it won't change the footprint of the layout of the site or anything. It'd be one hydrant, and typically that's landscaped to the extent possible to maintain accessibility for the fire department.
Thank you. Mr. Aquino?
So while a dry hydrant is a wise idea, is there precedence for legal requirements that we can actually force them to do so in building a site such as this?
To my knowledge, there is. The fire chief had submitted a review, and based on the square footage of the building, a dry hydrant standard that he references as required for commercial, industrial, multifamily cluster more than 1,000 feet from an adequate water supply. And because there is no public water available at this time in this area of town, a dry hydrant is the only essentially feasible option.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking, because I've gotten this question, so I wanted people to understand the answer for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Steffens?
The lighting plan, because I know it is a concern, it's something we need to consider. I'm looking at sheet A2 elevations. The lights are not on there, so I'm referring back to the lighting plan on sheet C3. So it looks like on the south side of the building, there's one wall-mounted light, and then 3 maybe on the north side, and 1 on the west side. So it looks like there's 1 light over each door.
Yeah, so is that your question? Just trying to understand the
I'm just
lighting
trying
plan?
to yes, just trying to understand the lighting.
Well, so the photometric study shows the range of light spread from each fixture, and the requirement is essentially that light does not trespass onto the adjacent properties. The lights are required to, the wall-mounted fixtures are required to be downward shielded, downward facing, and then direct the light basically for safety purposes to allow access to the building. It could be that the new conditions created by this might improve the lighting situation. I mean, the site will be lit, but this requirement not to trespass onto adjacent properties. So in other words, you can't have a light assigned to the building that's pointed out and pointed at someone's property. If that happens, they would be in violation of this site plan, and the township could require that those lights be shielded according to the plan that has been submitted at that time.
But it does not appear that there are excessive lights on the outside. If the photometric plan, C3, is showing the lights that are going on the building, it appears that there's a light over each door.
Ms. Steffens, in order to probably address your question more, Mr. O'Brien, is it?
Hughes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hughes. If you'd like to respond to the commissioner's question.
Yes, the lighting systems are going to be installed per sheet C3. What you might be looking at on sheet A2, above every exit door, there's an emergency light that has a battery backup that has to come on. It's a code item. Those aren't really considered site lights, but emergency exit lights or egress lights. So I believe they're type D fixtures that are shown on C3. Those are the lighting fixtures that, again, are going in, and the light levels that we're attaining are also shown on that same sheet. And it's not a lot of light, but it's adequate for what we're doing. Does that hopefully clear anything up?
It does. It's just, I was looking at the sheet A2, the elevations, and there were no building lights shown on that one, so I was just clarifying
I
that.
can't guarantee the accuracy of A2 relative to the site lighting plan, but I do know that A2 has emergency egress lights shown
Right.
above every door.
So see, the lighting plan, it seems like it's, the building is not outlined in lights, it's over each door, and the impact, I think, is going to be negligible based on the photometric.
Yes,
Yes.
again, the light level is very low. It's above, the site is really not used at nighttime, and, it's not important till.
Will those lights be on? Are they, will they be on a timer? Or will they be on overnight?
Timer.
Okay.
So I would imagine photo cell on, timer off would be the way that it should be activated.
All right.
But I do have a time clock going in the new building for the lights on the new building. And it will have a time clock, and they will set it to go off at what time? 10 o'clock.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Infante.
I wanted to, because I really do sympathize with the people who live in the area and the light problem. The problem with the lights, I mean, I don't want to diss my trash company, but it really is the neighboring business, and their lights are not at code elevation, and I don't know really that we can do anything about that. But the amount of light that floods out of that business, I think, is really the concern that maybe is what you're addressing. Completely understand. And I think in terms of what they're offering, it's negligible, yeah.
We'll be shielding more of that light with the plantings that are going around, so we'll take care of a little bit of it.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Kuzno.
Just real quick, what are the hours of operation of the facility?
We run from approximately 6:30 to 7 o'clock in the morning until usually 9:30, 10 o'clock at night.
Oh, so it's a long time.
Occasionally people come in later than that, so I doubt that the lights will go off much before 10:30, 11. But that'll be about it.
Okay, and then I'm understanding there's existing lights already on site, correct? So the ones that are labeled A's and B's on this lighting plan are existing, or?
We have parking lot lights,
So all the B lights are already existing?
yeah, and then we have lights on our old building.
Okay,
And that's just enough so that we, because they're all downward facing.
yeah,
And so that we're trying to light just the parking lot.
sure. All right, very good. Thank you.
The hours of business will be no different than they are now.
Yep, that's fine, thank you.
Yes, if there, any future questions for the applicant or representative, if one of you could please step up to the microphone, it would help the viewing audience much more. Ms. Chick.
So I'm looking at the landscaping plan, and you're adding quite a few additional landscaping items that will also help diffuse the lighting as well to the neighboring properties, correct? C4?
Are you asking Mr. Lippens or
Yes.
the applicant? Mr. Lippens? Okay.
I concur, yes. So
Okay.
there are substantive additions to the landscaping plan, and it certainly will help make the site more harmonious with the surrounding properties.
Thank you.
Mr. Lippens, can you please touch upon the any differences on the proposed landscape or site plan on their stormwater? Because I see there's some comments from Washtenaw County.
Yes.
Can you please go over some of those specifics as to anything different that they're requiring that we're seeing on the site plan?
So, let me turn to the Washtenaw County letter. On the site plan you have, the applicant has addressed the township's landscaping requirements. We're in receipt of a review letter from the Washtenaw County Drain Commission, which mentions additional landscaping that they want around the pond to ensure that it's complying with the county's stormwater processing requirements. From my take, it's positive. It's going to be more landscaping, and I think that it's not uncommon to receive a county approval following a township approval. So in our letters, we've recommended that if Planning Commission does entertain a motion to approve a site plan tonight, that they allow staff to administratively approve the additional landscaping around the pond on a final site plan submittal. And with that, we would want a letter of final approval from the Washtenaw County Drain Commission. I think it makes sense to do that administratively. If I felt like that would require moving any items on the site, if there were going to be changes to where the pond was placed, if we felt like that these requirements would make drastic changes to the landscaping that was proposed, we might recommend that it come back to Planning Commission for approval. But I think I'm comfortable with what I've read here from the Drain Commission. And moving forward, provided these comments are addressed, I think it will just make the pond look nicer and blend in not only on that site, but again, make it look better to the surrounding areas as well. And serve a stormwater processing purposes.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, is there a motion? I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Support.
Any questions on the motion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. I see under our agenda that it would be our new item 10 because we moved new business, switched it. We don't have discussion of they're not separated. In other words, Mr. Lippin's conditional use, and then there's a site plan, and on our agenda it's a site plan. So we can deliberate and am I correct? It wasn't included, but obviously when we go over the site plan, we'll deliberate and discuss and make a decision on the conditional use.
I think the way it's written on the site plan, you could at this time make a decision on the conditional use, but I don't think it would be inappropriate to make that motion in agenda item 10A when we
Correct.
hear the site plan.
Just wanted to
I concur.
make that clear. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to reports from committees. Board of Trustees, Ms. Chick.
Board of Trustees met last night. We had 16 items on our agenda. Most of it was housekeeping things, medical insurance, retirement benefits, that kind of thing. What was probably important to, of interest to the Planning Commission was that there is a law enforcement agency that's interested in renting or leasing the a part of the upstairs here, so we're going to be going into negotiations with them for them to talk about the lease, what they're going to do, you know, the build-outs that they have to do and that kind of thing. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. ZBA, Ms. Steffens.
We have not met since our last Planning Commission hearing.
Thank you. Anything from staff, Ms. Bird? Thank you. Mr. Lippin's planning consultant.
I do have a few updates on some items that were not on the agenda this evening because they're in progress, but I'd like to update Planning Commission. You know, we've had several discussions on the sign ordinance. At our last meeting when we discussed it, we referred that to the township attorney. My update is that has been done and that is still under review by the township attorney with note of some specific questions we asked for an interpretation of as well. Similarly, we, at the joint meeting last month with the board, reviewed an RFP for North Village. That RFP is also being reviewed now by the township attorney. Our hope is that that review will be complete in time to place that on the board's November 28th meeting. But I cannot confirm at this time that we'll be able to keep that time frame, but that's the time frame we've discussed. Similarly, we've also discussed, both at the joint meeting last month as well as our last Planning Commission meeting, a group of zoning amendments and planning process procedures that we would like to look at that time. I got direction from Planning Commission to take a proposal to the Township Board, and we hope that that will be included on the 11/28 Board agenda as well. And if not, it will likely be the first possible board meeting in December. But we're working to make that happen on the 11/28 meeting. And I thought I got, we had good feedback last month on those issues, and I'm still working with, as directed by Planning Commission, to bring those comments into a proposal to the board. And that is my update.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation, Mr. Aquino.
Thank you. Our next meeting will be the third Thursday in December, which is the 21st. We are switching our meetings to bi-monthly, so the meeting after that will be February and then so on. So if anyone is interested in anything that the Parks and Rec is working on, you can contact me or come to our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And Downtown Planning Group, Ms. Infante.
We have not met since our last meeting.
Thank you, because we're going to review that tonight. So, okay, we'll move on to the new item 10A, which would be new business. I make a motion to discuss the same Ann Arbor Dog Training Facility site plan. It's to recommend to approve with conditions, deny request of the same. Applicant proposed to construct the same 18,000 square foot building.
I support.
Thank you. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Mr. Lippens, would you like to go over the site plan in further detail?
Yes. Some of the items that I mentioned in my review of the conditional use are also the recommendations that we've made in the site plan review. But essentially there are some standards for kennels. Some of those do not apply to this because they're related to boarding of animals, and no boarding of animals is proposed, but some because it is a use where animals are on the site and it will be active, do apply. And the applicant did receive variance from setback requirement, largely due to the need to place a pond on the site as well. So it's a dimensional variance related to site constraints, and it was approved. But we found that the site as proposed is in compliance with those specific kennel requirements. We are requesting, again, that a note is added to the plan that no overnight boarding of animals is permitted. We reviewed the site for access, circulation, parking and loading, landscaping. There is a significant amount of landscaping being added to comply with the ordinance requirements. Stormwater management, again, you might ask the township engineer to comment more on this, but we found that with the pond and if meeting the requirements of Washtenaw County Drain Commission, that this standard is adequately met. Site lighting, the lighting plan is in conformance with the township requirements. The lighting is shielded, downward facing, and the photometric study reveals that no trespass on adjacent properties will occur. Trash enclosure is being added to the site on the southeast corner of the building. We have received floor plans for the structure and found that they're designed in a way to safely allow access to and from the building. And we did talk about the dry hydrant issue, which is a fire code issue, but the applicant has indicated they will add that to the site plan. So our recommendation is to approve the site plan with some revisions to be made on a final site plan submitted and to be approved administratively by the township staff. One, that the note is added stating no overnight boarding will be permitted on the site plan. Two, that any comments from the engineer who's here to address questions, fire chief or other departments would be addressed. We are only aware of the ones we mentioned this evening. Three, that the comments of the Washtenaw Drain Commission are incorporated on a revised site plan and approved administratively on the final site plan. And four, that the dry hydrant is added. And I am available for questions on this as well.
I'm sorry, any questions by commission? Seeing none. Do I hear a motion to, with a recommendation? Well, what we'd like, okay, I'd like to do the motion as both included. Is that okay? Mr. Lippens, we can do both the site plan and the conditional use approval in one motion? Or do you should be separate?
You could, but I would note separate conditions as stated in the planning review letter.
Okay, we can do separate motions. You prefer that?
It might be
more
better.
simple as far as record keeping goes, because you have, okay. So I will make a motion that we will start with the conditional use, that we approve with conditions listed on the November 6th report of the McKenna report to the Board of Trustees for approval with those conditions of the Ann Arbor Dog Training Club, 1575 East North Territorial Road.
I support.
Supported by Mr. Iaquino. Any questions on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor, we have to do a roll call vote, I'm sorry. Mr. Zarzeki.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Ms. Chick?
Yes.
Mr. Kuzno?
Yes.
Mr. Quinto?
Yes.
Mrs. Fonte?
Yes.
Ms. Steffens?
Yes.
Zarzeki, yes. All approved.
Thank you. I'd like to also make a motion to approve with the conditions listed on the McKenna report for approval to the Board of Trustees for the request of Ann Arbor Dog Training on their site plan for the construction of the new 18,000 square foot structure.
I'll support.
Supported by Ms. Chick. Any questions on the motion? Mr. Kuzno?
Friendly amendment. Is there engineering comments we want to add on there as well? I mean,
Yes, yes. Also, if there's, I think it's inclusive on Mr. Lippin's report, but Mr. McNamara, do you have any additional?
Not really. We had just identified a couple of other outside agency permits that would be required, including county health. So I guess I would recommend that those be included.
Right, because on the comments on the report, Mr. Kuzno, on number 2, any comments from the township engineer, fire chief, township departments be addressed on the final site plan.
okay, yep.
Is
thank
that
you.
adequate?
That's fine.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Zarzeki?
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Ms. Chick?
Yes.
Mr. Kuzno?
Yes.
Mr. Quinto?
Yes.
Mrs. Fonte?
Yes.
Ms. Steffens?
Yes.
Zarzeki, yes. Approved.
All approved. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you for your presentation and your attendance tonight. Thank you. So we'll move to item 11A, further discussion of proposed downtown plan. Mr. Lippens.
Sure. We had a good presentation last month at our joint meeting, discussed this plan in some detail, and decided that giving Planning Commission some extra time to read the plan, digest it, prepare for discussion would be desirable. So we're on the agenda tonight to further that discussion. I think that the guidance that I would provide is that you could entertain or change the motion this evening if you want. It's stated here as it was recommended by the DDA, and that the plan as presented tonight is a plan that was commissioned by the DDA, and we have recommended that plan is incorporated into the township master plan, but that tonight is not the action we're taking. So it might be good tonight to discuss Planning Commission's desires for the master plan update when the next master plan update is undertaken, which Planning Commission has recommended begins in this work year. And certainly to make comments on the plan in that respect is definitely appropriate. But the action, and the reason the action is proposed to accept the plan, is because the study was commissioned by the DDA and was approved by the DDA. We were very lucky to have the participation of Township Board and Planning Commission on the steering committee during that process, and met more than 6 times with the DDA and committee representatives in the development of the plan, and as well as a public workshop, a ice cream social on a Saturday, and we did additional surveying. So it was a good process, and of course it's presented in the plan, all the outreach that was done and the feedback we received. I think well, I probably have more comments, but let me turn it over to Planning Commission. It's your show, and I'm certainly here for questions about it.
Thank you. And I also want to make note that we previously visited although it was in our packet for tonight, the North Village plan, and we made a recommendation prior to that, so it's not really part of this discussion.
Correct. Yeah, we're focusing on the downtown plan tonight.
Correct.
The North Village plan is something that the Planning Commission had already reviewed. That plan is also recommended for incorporating into the master plan, but until such a time when we initiate the master plan process, that plan, it kind of exists as a policy report that was commissioned by the township, but it's not a part of the master plan, and has not at this time been incorporated into the master plan.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Infante, do you have any? No? You're in agreement? Okay. I am too. I mean, the plan looks like a good one. I stated that at the joint meeting. So really what we're looking for tonight is to, proceed with a recommendation to the Board of Trustees, as Mr. Lippens basically stated in item B. Mr. Iaquino.
I wanted to address one of the statements made by actually 2 of the residents that came up to speak. There is a discussion, and it is part of the plan to have a beach on that. And so I'm sure that'll go to whatever degree that the RFQ will put it, but it does say that the amenities that will be offered will be a fishing dock, a beach, a marina, and public parking. So that is part of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Chick, any comments?
No, I've seen it and participated in the visioning as well, and I'm very comfortable with all of it. I think it's a good plan. I just want to remind people that are listening or watching that it's not in stone. This is all very fluid. This is just a vision for the area, and it can change, but we like the way it looks now.
Okay, so seeing no other comments or questions, Mr. Lippens, do you have anything further that you'd like to add? You said you wanted to, you had some more comments or details?
Well,
Anything
I
at
guess,
this time?
if we're discussing it, I know there was some discussion about the branding element and whether we should sign as Northfield Township or Whitmore Lake. And in my comments, I didn't reflect fully the discussion that was a long discussion that was held by the Downtown Planning Group as well as the DDA, that making the decision to look at the downtown area as Whitmore Lake was consistent with how that area has been known, really, as long as it's been there. And I would say that my offer tonight about that was it's also consistent with other unincorporated hamlets in the state. Two that I've worked in near the Lansing area in Meridian Township. There's Okemos, as well as Hazlitt. In Delhi Township, there's the Holt area. And then in our county, in Washtenaw County, Dixboro is another unincorporated hamlet that is known separate from the township. So I don't want to distract from the conversation, but I don't feel like I accurately represented the depth of thought and discussion that the DDA or the Downtown Planning Group put into that aspect of this study. So I'm offering that this evening just to follow up on our discussion last month.
Thank you. Ms. Chick?
Discussion, I think that it was important for a long time. The citizens of Northfield Township that are not in the Whitmore Lake area often feel that there's a lot of tension on the Whitmore Lake area and that Northfield doesn't feel like they're connected. And the purpose of branding that area with at least some kind of connectivity to Northfield is part of the title, as part of the signage, however they want to do it. I mean, it's still up for discussion, is that Northfield, the residents of Northfield would like to be part of this as well and own it as part of theirs. So I think it's worth of a discussion on naming.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to recommend to the Board of Trustees that they accept the plan as policy and incorporate the plan in the next master plan update as recommended by the DDA.
Support.
Supported by Mr. Iaquino. Any questions on that motion? Mr. Zarzaki, we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Ms. Chick?
Yes.
Mr. Kuzno?
Yes.
Mr. Quinto?
Yes.
Ms. Afonte?
Yes.
Ms. Steffens?
Yes.
Zarzaki, yes.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 12. Approval of the preceding minutes. There's October 18th and October 24th joint board trustee meeting, and so I make a motion that we approve those and dispense with reading.
Support on both.
Supported by Mr. Iaquino. Any questions or comments regarding the minutes? Okay, seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Final call to the public. Anyone wish to address the Planning Commission? You have 3 minutes. I believe the microphone will work this time for you.
Dave Gordon, 5558 Helmer Road. I hope it all works out well with the park. I hope this RFP that comes through is a good one. And I just want to recall the DDA. Now, maybe the DDA of today isn't the same DDA of 10 years ago, but the last big project they wanted to do was borrow $28 million to put an 8-lane bridge at Territorial and US 23. We have a new bridge at US 23 right now. We haven't put the DDA and the townships $28 million in debt to do it. So just a little bit of history. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the commission? Seeing none, we'll go to comments from commissioners. We'll start with Ms. Infante tonight. Ms. Steffens.
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Zarzaki.
Nothing at this time?
Ms. Chick?
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Mr. Aquino?
Happy Thanksgiving as well.
Mr. Kuzno?
No comment, thank you.
Okay, thank you. None from me. Announce the next meeting. Next regular meeting is December 6th. And is there a motion to adjourn?
Support. Move.
Moved?
Move and support.
Well, I'll support it, and Ms. Chick supported it. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.